Hello, my name is Jacob Duffney, and I'm going to be telling you the 5 reasons why Joe Biden should not be president. 1. Throughout his entire political career, which extends more than 50 years, he has told many lies to gain votes and gain the public's trust just to kind of stab them in the back. He is ridiculously racist, and we'll get more into that later. He is kind of almost acting as a dictator right now with all these executive orders that he's signing. He's been wrong and has had bad foreign policy throughout his throughout his political career, and he's constantly shifting his way of thinking to match up with the modern day Democrats. So let's get straight into the first step, should we? So this first lie that I'm going to talk about happened a couple weeks ago from the day I'm filming this, which is February 24th, 2021. And he has said that the vaccine for COVID-19 wasn't even really a thing up until he became president on January 20th of 2021, which is absolutely ridiculous because he got his 2 vaccine shots before he was even inaugurated.
The vaccine, which we didn't have when we came into office.
Even get more into it, he said that on October 25th of 2020, in a 60 Minutes interview, he said, "I can send every qualified person to a 4-year college in their state for $150 billion," which is absolutely ridiculous to even think that could be the case. And then he also said on October 10th of 2020, in a comment to reporters, he said, "Senate Republicans moved to confirm Judge Amy Coney Barrett to a Supreme Court in an election year is not constitutional," which is farther from the truth, as you could see that happen with John Adams in the Marbury versus Madison case, Supreme Court case, where John Adams actually signed a bill into law from the Federalist Congress for the circuit court system, and then stacked it with a whole bunch of Federalist judges, and then which turned into a big kabobble because William Marbury didn't even get his commission letter in time and was told by Jefferson that he had no right to his spot on the stand due to him not getting his commission letter before Jefferson became president. And then on July 22nd, 2020, in a town hall, said, "No U.S. presidents elected before Donald Trump were racist," which is laughable at best. And then on September 12th, 2019, he says the Obama administration didn't lock people in cages. And then July 27, 2016, he says Donald Trump is going to go out and carpet bomb the Middle East. What, so he's just going to take out all the people in the Middle East? Which was pretty damn far from the truth. And then on August 30th, 2011, he says U.S. Representative Paul Ryan's budget proposal eliminates Medicare in 10 years. Which, I don't know where he gets these things. Yeah, I have no idea where he gets these things. But you can see them get scrolled through your screen as I was talking there. And then the next thing I'm going to talk about is all the racist things that he has said throughout his time in the spotlight. And let me tell you something, I'm not going to talk about it. I'm going to let the videos that you're about to see on your screen speak for themselves. Cut.
Are you going to apologize like Cory Booker
Apologize for what?
Cory Booker's called for it.
Cory should apologize. He knows better. There's not a racist bone in my body. I've been involved in civil rights my whole career.
You cannot go to a 7-Eleven or a Dunkin' Donuts unless you have a slight Indian accent. I'm not joking.
The world is different. There's too much unfinished business for us to just look backwards. We have to look to the future.
I know Joe. We know Joe. But most importantly, Joe knows us. That's right.
And by the way, you know, I sit on the stand and it get hot. I got hairy legs that turn turn blonde in the sun. And the kids used to come up and reach in the pool and rub my leg down so it was straight, and then watch the hair come back up again. They'd look at it. So I learned about roaches. I learned about kids jumping on my lap. And I've loved kids jumping on my lap. Even call centers, was rushed overseas in the hundreds of thousands. How many times you get the call? I'd like to talk to you about your credit card. Poor kids are just as bright and just as talented as white kids. They're going to put you all back in chains.
In my opinion, we don't need white people leading the Democratic Party right now. The Democratic Party is diverse, and it should be reflected as so in our leadership.
But I tell you, if you have a problem figuring out whether you're for me or Trump, and you ain't black.
Why does this happen?
I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do this because let me just be really clear. Vice President Biden absolutely has a respect level for all people around him, for voters across this country, young people, older voters, voters of color, black people, Latino voters, indigenous, Asian American, Pacific Islander. So I'm not going to even traffic in any hypothetical conversation about if he is sensitive enough. In my opinion, we don't need white people leading the Democratic Party right now.
But I tell you, if you have a problem figuring out whether you're for me or Trump, and you ain't black.
I think Joe Biden might be suffering from that same white entitlement and privilege and ego, where he's just that old school white male who feels like, hey, man, they need me, I don't need them, or I got them already.
Joe Biden is under fire this evening on comments he made about working alongside segregationist senators in the past.
Biden recalling his early Senate career, bringing up two segregationist senators, Herman Talmadge and James Eastland, who called African Americans an inferior race. I was in a caucus with James O. Eastland, Biden said. He never called me boy, he always called me son. At least there was some civility. We got things done. We didn't agree on much of anything. We got things done.
I think the two-party system, although my Democratic colleagues don't like me saying this, I think the two-party system is good for the South and good for the Negro, good for the black in the South. Other than the fact that they still call me boy, I think they've changed their mind a little bit.
It's that old school white male.
They're going to put you all back in chains.
30 seconds or less. What kind of a chance would a northeastern liberal like Joe Biden stand in the South if you were running in Democratic primaries against Southerners like Mark Warner and John Edwards?
Better than anybody else. And you don't know my state. My state was a slave state. My state is a border state. My state is the 8th largest black population in the country. My state is anything from a northeast liberal state.
It's that old school white male.
Choosing Joe to be my vice president was one of the best decisions I ever made.
Not the first sort of mainstream African American who is articulate and bright and clean and a nice looking guy. I mean, that's a storybook, man.
My son is Attorney General, a year in Iraq, came back, and that's one of the things that he finds was most in need. When he was over there in Iraq for a year, people would come to him and talk about what was happening to them at home in terms of foreclosures, in terms of bad loans that were these Shylocks who took advantage of these women and men. Back from Mumbai to go meet with President Xi in China, I stopped in Singapore to meet with a guy named Lee Kuan Yew, who most foreign policy experts around the world say is the wisest man in the Orient. There's not a racist bone in my body. But I tell you, if you have a problem figuring out whether you're for me or Trump, then you ain't black.
Okay. So, how could anybody vote for someone who thinks like that? That, to me, is a huge major problem. But now we're going to talk about his role as a dictator. I'm not calling him a dictator. I'm saying that he has already called himself a dictator. Back then, he said that Donald Trump was and I'm not quoting here, I'm paraphrasing. I'll play the actual video in a second. He said that Donald Trump was a dictator because he was ruling by executive order.
So there's not going to be any delay on the tax increases?
No, well, I got to get the votes. That's why, the one thing that I have this strange notion. We are a democracy. Some of my Republican friends and some of my Democratic friends even occasionally say, well, if you can't get the votes by executive order, you're going to do something. Things you can't do by executive order unless you're a dictator. We're a democracy. We need consensus.
Got to take a quick break. We'll be...
Which, let me tell you something. He is on pace to surpass Donald Trump in his first 4 years. And if he's reelected in 2024, he is on pace to break FDR's executive order rate. He has signed 32 executive orders through pretty much his first month as president. And let me tell you, from his first month as president, he is on pace to sign 384 executive orders in his first year as president alone. And throughout his entire 4-year term, is on pace for 1,536 executive orders. That is absolutely ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous and not called for. So yeah, he has essentially called himself a dictator because of that. Joe Biden has also been wrong on every foreign policy to date. And I'm not saying that. Former U.S. Defense Secretary Robert Gates for Obama said that. And let's roll that clip.
In your memoir, Joe Biden is impossible not to like. Quote, he's a man of integrity, incapable of hiding what he really thinks, and one of those rare people you know you could turn to for help in a personal crisis. Still, I think he's been wrong on nearly every major foreign policy and national security issue over the past 4 decades. Would he be an effective commander-in-chief?
I don't know. I think I stand by that statement.
He originally supported President Bush in the Iraq War. And then a few years later he is still in support of it, and then out of nowhere said that he totally was against it. And here's a video of him pretty much saying that.
I did make a bad judgment trusting the president saying he was only doing this to get inspectors in and get the UN to agree to put inspectors in. From the moment shock and awe started, from that moment, I was opposed to the effort, and I was outspoken as much as anyone at all in the Congress and administration.
Not to mention that he was in favor of pulling the troops out of Iraq. And when President Obama did that, that led to the rise of ISIS. And here's the video of that. And then he was also not in favor of the raid that ended in killing Osama bin Laden. Which, how? I just want to know, how are you not in favor of killing Osama bin Laden? Osama bin Laden used to be on our side and then went against us and was one of the greatest terrorists in the entire world. And yet, you're not in favor of killing, at that time, probably the world's most dangerous man? How? How? And here's the video.
I said we owe the man a direct answer. Mr. President, my suggestion is don't go. We have to do 2 more things to see if he's there.
And then he also supported the Iran deal, claiming that the Iran deal would help stabilize the Middle East, which, total nonsense. Now they threaten to nuke us, and so forth, and here's a video about that.
I've come to the conclusion that in the context I've just cited, that this is a good deal. This is a good deal for first and foremost for the United States. It's a good deal for the world, the region, and it's a good deal for Israel and the Gulf cooperation states.
And that Iran deal only helped funded the terrorist regime in the Middle East and has ended in the deaths of American soldiers, which is no good for anybody and shouldn't have ever been tolerated. And then early in 2020, Joe Biden was against Donald Trump killing, hold on, I got his name right here, Qasem Soleimani, and which he claimed would end in retaliation, which is far from the truth and not true at all. And Joe Biden has always been very critical of Israel. When Donald Trump moved the embassy to Jerusalem, which had no downside whatsoever and was highly favorable throughout the country, he still says he wouldn't do it. And here's the video about that too.
This is an administration that, as you know, advocated moving the capital of Israel to Jerusalem from Tel Aviv. If you are elected president, would you reverse that?
Not now, I wouldn't reverse it. I wouldn't have done it in the first place.
Joe Biden is also constantly shifting his viewpoints all the time. He told Ronald Reagan in 1989 that he needed to do more on drugs. And has been an advocate against drugs as a whole.
I think the president has to join us in making a significantly greater commitment to these 6 areas to stem the rising tide of violence in America. And that's what it is, violence. First, we have to join together to ensure that drug dealers are punished swiftly, surely, and severely. And in line with what the president is calling for, we have to hold every drug user accountable. Because if there were no drug users, there would be no appetite for drugs and there'd be no market for them.
In 1993, he was actually one of the co-authors of the 1994 federal crime bill, which helped produce mass incarcerations throughout time, and he was one of the chief sponsors of it. And as you can see, throughout time, even that changed. Which which Donald Trump's crime bill to help reduce those sentences of the mass incarcerations almost looked bad in a way because Donald Trump did it. But yet no one blinked an eye when Joe Biden did it as well. Or no one blinked. And Donald Trump was giving those criminals second chances in his crime bill. But yet, when Biden did it, no one blinked an eye over it. And that is totally insane. And in 2016, he was still against the legalization of marijuana. But in 2019 to 2020, he apologized for the huge mistake of this crime bill. And you can see that he was claiming that it was a huge mistake. Oh yeah, was it? And he also was trying to say that it didn't produce mass incarcerations. But here's a look at this graph right here. Yes, there was. Yes, there was. And he flipped on the legalization of marijuana and also flipped on the death penalty. So every criminal policy that he believed in, he flipped it. How could anyone have vote for someone that is so inconsistent? He did the same thing with abortion too. He was against abortion, and was in favor of the Hyde Amendment, which made it so the federal government didn't fund abortion. But then he also, as time came, flipped on that as well, right here.
Can't justify leaving millions of women without access to the care they need and the ability to exercise their constitutionally protected right. If I believe health care is a right, as I do, I can no longer support an amendment that makes that right dependent on someone's zip code.
And he also, he was also against Roe v. Wade, but now he thinks that Roe v. Wade should be put into law so the Supreme Court doesn't overrule it. But as I talked about Marbury v. Madison earlier, it gave the Supreme Court the right of judicial review, which is the review of legislation and be able to say that's not constitutional or not. So let me say that even if there was legislation to make Roe v. Wade the law, the Supreme Court could just overrule it. Simple as that. And it's just absolutely devastating to think like that.
The new Supreme Court nomination of Amy Coney Barrett, what are your particular plans to protect women's reproductive rights in the U.S.?
Number one, we don't know exactly what she will do, although the expectation is that she may very well move to overrule Roe. But the only responsible response to that would be to pass legislation making Roe the law of the land.
And he also once was in favor of building a fence along our southern border. Pretty much the same thing that Donald Trump was doing with his wall. And then also prosecute companies for hiring illegal immigrants. Here it is.
I voted for a fence. I voted unlike most Democrats, and some of you won't like it. I voted for 700-mile fence. But let me tell you, we can build a fence 40 stories high unless it changes the dynamic in Mexico. And you will not like this, and punish American employers who knowingly violate the law when in fact they hire illegals.
So that is why Joe Biden is unfit to be president. And let's recap here. He lies about everything to gain an advantage. He is a racist. He is almost acting like a dictator, from his own words. And he also has been wrong on every foreign policy in his lifetime and is constantly shifting back and forth on everything that he supposedly believes in. And that is that. My name is Jacob Duffney, and thank you all for watching.